Hello, everyone. My name is Haley Stewart, and today I'm going to provide a training on effective self-monitoring and performance feedback. The overview of our training for today is that this training is going to introduce a structured system for staff self-monitoring and performance feedback in ABA clinical settings. Our training is going to emphasize autonomy, accountability, and professional growth by pairing self-assessment with supervisor support. This system improves treatment fidelity, promotes equity, and supports staff development. By the end of this presentation, staff should be able to identify the components of a self-monitoring and feedback system, accurately self-monitor using a checklist aligned with clinical duties, interpret and respond to supervisor feedback for performance growth, apply best practices for fidelity and communication, as well as recognize common challenges and strategies to overcome them. So what is self-monitoring? Self-monitoring is a process where a person observes and records their own behavior to increase awareness and improve performance. It's used in ABA because it promotes individual responsibility and active involvement in improving one's own performance, which are often missing in those traditional top-down supervisor-driven management systems we've seen in the past. Some of the benefits of using this self-monitoring would be autonomy, increased fidelity, and empowerment. So before we get any further into this, I wanted to share with you just an example of what some of these checklists might look like. It doesn't have to be too crazy. It can be very simple. It's really just a way that someone can have a set of goals or tasks that they're looking for and then be able to self-reflect on those things and then come back and collaborate with their supervisor on ways to improve upon those things. And each of these three checklists, task analysis will be shared with you at the end of this presentation. So when we're delivering this feedback, it should be timely and frequent. It should be delivered immediately after observation. So especially during the acquisition of new skills or behavior change efforts, we should be giving this feedback very quickly. It's most effective when it's delivered immediately following a self-monitoring interval or a time whenever they were observed by their supervisor. Feedback can and should be done regularly, such as at the end of each session or each shift, so that we can maintain consistency. Feedback should be specific, behavior-based, and goal-referenced, focusing on what was done well and what might need improvement. It should include positive reinforcement for accurate self-monitoring and desired performance. Feedback is more effective when it is collaborative, meaning whenever we're allowing supervisees to reflect on their own self-monitoring and data and then participate in the problem solving with the supervisor. Tone should always be constructive and supportive. So maintaining cultural responsiveness and promoting autonomy is one of our key goals here. So supportive feedback means that we are focusing on encouragement and praise and reinforcement of behaviors that could already be meeting expectations. We would use supportive feedback to help maintain or increase motivation, build rapport, and reinforce correct or desirable performance. An example of doing this would be like, hey, you did a great job using behavior-specific praise during the session. Your timing was perfect. On the other hand, directive feedback provides specific guidance or correction when performance does not meet expected standards. So our purpose here is to improve performance by clearly identifying what needs to change and how. The tone whenever we're giving this is going to be instructional and focused on change, though it should always be delivered respectfully and constructively. An example of this would be saying, hey, you missed 2 of the last data points during the session. Next time, let's use self-monitoring sheets to prompt data collection every 5 minutes. So there are a few challenges that we see with these. Some of those would be over-reporting and under-reporting. So over-reporting is whenever staff exaggerate or inflate their performance. This is often unintentional, but it just happens during these self-reflection times. It can happen because they have a desire to appear more competent than they are. It could be a misunderstanding of what actually constitute correct performance. It could also be a lack of clear, objective performance criteria from the supervisor. Underreporting is whenever we talk about staff minimizing or failing to perform or to give their accurate performance. And this happens whenever individuals have a lack of confidence. They, again, could have a misunderstanding of expectations. It could also be due to cultural norms. And in some cultures, it is discouraged to self-promote. So you always want to underplay yourself. So then there's also misinterpretation of expectations. This is when staff do not clearly understand performance standards or supervisor expectations. This can be due to vague instructions given by the supervisor or a lack of task clarification. It could be due to cultural or communication style differences. It can also be due to a lack of written examples or monitoring, and that's what we always want to provide our supervisees. Another common challenge would be staff discomfort with feedback. If staff feel very uneasy or threatened whenever they're receiving performance feedback, no matter if it's corrective or directive, it can cause issues. So this can happen due to past negative experiences with feedback. It could be due to a power imbalance in the supervisory relationship. Again, cultural norms would play a part in this. And it could be due to feedback being delivered in a judgmental or unclear manner by a supervisor in the past. So some of our solutions and best practices for this would be monitoring these self tools in meetings and like during your actual supervision. Using objective performance criteria always, and pairing feedback with praise and coaching. So never just handing out what needs to be corrected and not giving that support after. So I want everyone to think for a second about yourself. So in a real world scenario, we've given an RBT a checklist, so they complete the checklist, they get feedback, and then they act on those changes. So an outcome that could come from this would be improvement in session prep and client engagement, meaning that if this individual saw on their checklist that they needed more help with getting things together before session or getting their client to engage, these things were then pointed out in their self-reflection, and then their supervisor should be there to provide them with exact examples, video, monitoring, or even checklist or visuals to use to help support them in that. And the supervisor should always be available to help in coaching and clarification of this expectation. So I do have a few tips for implementation before we end. Always be honest and specific when self-monitoring, like rating yourself. Use examples to clarify ambiguous tasks. Approach feedback as an opportunity for growth. And then supervisors should always provide timely, specific, and kind feedback. I want to put emphasis on kind because every one of us have been in this situation, and we know that whenever it's brought off kind, then people are more likely to take that advice. So I am going to also give everyone a moment to think. So just grab a piece of paper if you have one. If not, you can type it down on your phone. But think of a time when you received feedback at work and how did it affect your performance or mindset? I'm going to give us a minute to think on that. Well, 30 seconds. If you didn't have time to think through this fully, I do want to encourage you to come back and think on this. But just to share my own, whenever I was a special ed teacher, first year teaching, I wrote an IEP, and at the school I was at, we had someone go through and edit those, and I received an IEP back that looked like someone had died on it. There was red markings all over. Um, and even though in the long run, it helped me to develop much better IEPs by this whole process, it made me doubt my skills tremendously in the beginning. And from this day till this day, I still do not use red pens whenever I'm giving feedback because I think that red is offensive. So think about your own and just think about how these things can impact our supervisory relationships. So in conclusion, self-monitoring and feedback, they equal performance growth. It will be both for the supervisor and the supervisee. Um, Self-monitoring and feedback reinforce accountability and professionalism, as well as encourage open communication. And that's all I have for you guys today. So thank you so much. I will be sending out the list of some of the handouts, like those charts that I had and some notes. And then also there's some cards over there with my supervisor contact that if you're here in person, you can see. If not, I will send it through an email. And we do have some references here. And I thank you all so much for attending my training, and I hope you have a great day.